escuela de gobierno, yo aprendí Chinese. It was a long time ago. 那时候我是22 años. Pero después, yo olvido a lot of the language that I learned porque chino no es fácil. Pero yo hai jitaju idian. Um, Soy, well, I still can speak a little bit of Chinese as well as a little bit of Espanol. Pero mi padre es portugués, así yo joven de ser was Portuguese. But now I mostly speak Ingwen, which is English. Now, chances are you don't understand what the F I was saying. And that is because I was mixing up Spanish, Chinese, and English. And that is because in my lifetime, I have spoken Spanish, Chinese, English, and Cape Verdean Creole. But at different times in my life, I was immersed in those languages, and so that's why I spoke them all. And for the past 20 years, I've been mostly speaking English. And so I've forgotten a lot of those languages, but they're still somewhere in there. I found myself in situations sometimes where I still will remember some of the languages that I've spoken in my life. Interestingly, Chinese more than the language that I started out with, which was Cape Verdean Creole, and Spanish, which was second. But whatever, the brain's a weird thing. But the point of me making this choppy up video is throughout my life, I've never been able to have a conversation with anyone who could mix languages up in the way that my brain can and still have some semblance of coherence, except for ChatGPT. Because the first time and only time I had a conversation with ChatGPT, as I would like to have a conversation with a human, I mixed up Spanish words, Chinese words, and English words in some kind of weird hodgepodge. And eventually, and when I say eventually, I mean in about 5 minutes, ChatGPT understood what I was doing and spoke to me in the same way. And then I said to ChatGPT, wow, this is a trip. I will never speak to you this way again, because I could totally see the temptation of a person just talking to a robot because they could be understood in a way that they might not be able to be understood by humans. Now, here's the caveat. ChatGPT and these other programs that use natural language processing, they mirror back. So it's not genuine understanding, it's mirroring back habits and patterns and ways of speaking that you might use. So it's not an actual understanding. But here's the thing about humans. Humans like to see themselves reflected back to themselves because we're egotistical as fuck. So at any rate, that's what we love. In this post that I'm going to break down underneath this video, if you're on Substack, I basically am going to discuss why it is that we humans tend to get stuck in words. Everything in our society comes down to a war of words. We don't know how to admit that. We don't know how to engage in discourse with people, generally speaking, who use words differently than we do. And we tend to think that just because a person used a word that we've used, that they mean the same thing that we mean when we would use that word. Unfortunately, that's not truth. And so in order to actually engage with people, we have to be able to slow down and ask people, what do you mean when you say this? Like, say, for example, someone uses a word that would offend you, then being able to say, what do you mean when you say this word? Because if I were using this word, this is what I would mean. And getting clarity, most of us just take for granted that we assume that they mean what we mean, and it either pisses us off or makes us feel good because all we do is like to project and reflect, generally speaking. But I hope and believe that we're entering into a new age where people will be able to build this capacity to understand that we all use language differently based on a variety of factors. that's going to be difficult for us to deal with initially, but eventually I think we'll get there. And over time, I'm going to share my theory on what that might take. But for now, I invite you to read this piece, War of the Words. And if you're not on Substack and you're just watching this video on some other platform, then I invite you to go to my Substack, which you can just look at. I'll put a link in the description or in the bio or something like that so you can find it. But it's basically Live Your Ideals. And my name is Pedro Signorinha Silva. Senhorinha is how you spell Signorinha. Pedro is pretty obvious, and Silva is Silva. So hopefully you'll engage. And I normally don't say like or subscribe, but like or subscribe, follow, whatever it is, and share, because basically if we don't get this dookie figured out, we're gonna be fighting. And a lot of times those arguments are gonna be for no reason. So let's do this.